I want to wish everyone a good morning, Boker Tov, and great to see everyone this morning. Let me just begin by announcing the sponsors for today's shiur. We have a regular sponsor, Le'iloi Nishmas Miriam Bas Avram Alav Shalom V'Shem Tov Ben Shlomo Zichrono Livracha, and we have a second sponsor dedicating the shiur this morning for Refuah Shlema for Rabbi Menachem Persof's daughter. She's scheduled for surgery this morning, Monday morning, and we pray for a Refuah Shlema to Dina Yehudis Bas Chana Chasya. All right, we have the schus to continue our learning of Rav KOOK, Rav Avram Yitzchak Cohen KOOK, from the Sefer Eretz Chefetz, and Rav KOOK is going to be discussing a very important issue. And it's an issue that is still being discussed today in the Jewish world, and that is the place of work, of avoda, of having a profession. How do we view that? Where is that to be placed in terms of the priorities in Jewish life? Do we look at that as what we call a b'di'evet? Is that something that's just secondary, that we're kind of forced into a situation where we need to find some work in order to pay the bills? Or do we find in some way holiness and significance in work, in what we call malacha? And we'll see in a moment where Rav KOOK stands on this. But I want to begin with the following, and that is just to appreciate how this issue was a very, very sensitive issue in the days of Rav KOOK. So going back to the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s, I want to share with you the following, and this is from the writings of Theodor Herzl. And Theodor Herzl is thinking about the first flag for a new state of Israel, for a country that will be the homeland of the Jewish people, and what to place on that flag. So this is the bottom of page 1. This is taken from Google, and it says the following. In Theodor Herzl's 1896 Der Judenstaat, a book that he wrote, he stated, "We have no flag, and we need one. If we desire to lead many people, we must raise a symbol above their heads." So he speaks about the importance of having a flag. And what is the flag? And by the way, we actually have the drawing of Herzl in his diary of what he had in mind for the flag of Israel. I would suggest a white flag with 7 golden stars. The white field symbolizes our pure life. That is the whiteness of the flag, the purity of the nation of Israel. And the stars are the 7 golden hours of our working day. So this is what Herzl has in mind for the flag of the state of Israel. And this comes out of the socialist perspective of the importance of work, of all things to place on the flag that represents the new state of Israel, that we're going to symbolize the work ethic, the importance of working every day. 7 stars in the flag, representing the 7 hours of work. Aware that the nascent movement had no official flag, David Wolfson, a prominent Zionist, felt that the design proposed by Herzl was not gaining significant support. Herzl's original proposal, however, was for a flag completely devoid of any traditional Jewish symbolism. And by the way, we know that that flag of Wolfson was based on the talus, and those are the stripes on the flag. But here we have Herzl, who suggests the idea of 7 golden stars, reading the last 2 lines here, representing the 7-hour workday of the enlightened state to be, which would have advanced socialist legislations. So this is what Rav KOOK, this is the world that Rav KOOK is in. This is the culture, this is the thinking of the day, in terms of putting great significance and kavod, honor, to the work that one does. And how does Rav KOOK respond to that? What is the Jewish perspective, right? What is our perspective in terms of work, in terms of putting in a long day of work? Is that something that's esteemed? Is that something that has value? Is that something that has kedusha? Or is that something that is really secondary? It's really not, that's not the essence of Jewish life. And by the way, we'll see in a moment that this is one of the struggles of the yeshiva world, the yeshiva movement, the importance of studying Torah, and what is the value of working, and where in our priorities, where does that fit in? So let's look at the words of Rav KOOK. Now this is found Eretz Chefetz. We're We're making our way towards the end of the Sefer. We're Perek Yud Aleph, and this is the 11th chapter. This is Bet. This is the second piece that's found in Perek Yud Aleph, and now we're reading the words of Rav Kook, which are found originally in his work Orot. And he writes the following. Davar pashutu. It is absolutely a simple fact, Shahat Tzaddik Oseh Kol Ma'asa B'Kedusha, that every act that a tzaddik does, he does in a holy way. V'chol Pe'ulotav Hagashmiut, and even his physical activity, and here it sounds like he may be referring to the work, engaging in work in an occupation, Olot L'Tikuno Shel Olam, that it's lifted up to be a tikkun, as a fixing of the world. V'zoti ahavat hamilacha. Now he uses a very interesting phrase here, and that is the love, and that's what it means, says Rav Kook, when we speak about love of work, ahava of malacha, love of a profession. Now where does he get that language from? And if you just look quickly on the second page, the top of page 2, I guess the other side of the page, this is a Mishnah that's found in Avos, and appropriate for these days, as many have the minhag to be studying Pirkei Avos during these weeks on the Shabbosim. Shemaya ve'Avtalyon. This is the top of page 2. If anybody needs another source sheet, there are a few copies up here. Shemaya ve'Avtalyon kiblu me'em. Shemaya omer ehav et hamilacha. So this is a statement that's made. And interesting, again, you have a great Rabbi, Shemaya, that he has to make this statement to love work, to love having a profession, to love the work that you're doing. What does that mean? Okay, so let's now come back to Rav Kook. Rav Kook says that one is to love the work that they're doing. V'zoti avat hamelacha. In other words, to find holiness in that, to raise that work to a level of kedusha, that is what it means, avat hamelacha. Shekol kach sagva malata mitzad atzma. That work in itself, the very act of having a profession, being engaged in a profession, that in itself, again, there may be secondary reasons why you could find holiness in it, but work in itself, intrinsically, has Kedusha, says Rav Kook. V'shenitna bivrit, and it's given, again, using a surprising term here, a striking term, that work also is given bibris, within the covenant. Kamosha HaTorah nidna bibris. Ume'ata ein safek. And at this point, there is no doubt, shetikun olam maleh, that to fix the world in the fullest sense, v'hitrachvut or hakodesh, and to extend and to widen the light of holiness, nimtza be'emet b'chol melacha. You can find that in all work that one does. So here, how is Rav Kook responding to, again, I mean, in general, this is a question how we think about the idea of having a profession, being engaged in work, but specifically in his day, how is he relating to the idea that you have this community, you have the chalutzim that are engaged in the pride that they have in the work that they're doing. Rav Kook says that's holiness, that's part of the bris, that's part of the covenant, right? You're elevating, to elevate work is to elevate kedusha. Let's read one more line, or maybe a couple more lines in Rav Kook here. Kol tinua shematzelet eze chelek min havaya. Any act that's done, any movement that's done, that literally saves reality, min shlitat hatohu, from that which is tohu, that which is chaotic. Davar gadol uklali yesh ba. There's something great in that. In other words, we have a world that can be very chaotic. And to be engaged in work, to bring civilization to a place where you have order, that is considered to be also an act of kedusha. Let's read one more paragraph. Yesh koach b'tzadikim, and there's a particular power of tzadikim, litain or, to give or, kedusha, a light of holiness, be'atzmut ha'melacha, to the very essence of work, ad sheyeh ba me'ein koach shel Torah. That work, that you can find in work a power that's similar to the power of Torah. I would say this is a radical statement to make. As people often ask, what is it in the writings of Rav Kook that they find problematic? I'm not sure if these words and this idea is something that everyone would agree to. That in work itself, in malacha itself, that you can find ba me'ein koach. You have a bit of the strength of Torah itself. La'avi l'chayei olam haba. That it brings you to the world to come, l'takein et hapigamim, that it fixes the blemishes, ulahashiv b'tshuva gmura et oskeha, and it brings tshuva, a repentance to those that are involved in work. Okay. And one more line in Rav Kook, and then we'll look at a couple of sources around what Rav Kook is saying. Here he quotes the following Gemara, and look at this Gemara. The Gemara says, Gadol hanene, this is a Gemara in Brachos, Gadol hanene miyagia kapav, greater is the one who enjoys the benefit of their hands, of their work, of their profession, yoter miyirei Hashem, even greater than the one who is Yirei Hashem. Now that's not Rav Kook speaking, by the way. That's the Gemara. It's a Gemara in Brachos, which we'll see in a moment. The Gemara in Brachos says, let's read the words and translate, Gadol hanen miyagia kapav, greater is the benefit or joy that one experiences from the effort of their hands, meaning the work that they do, yoter, even more so than Yirei Shamayim, than the one who has Yirat Shamayim. Now what do you do with that exactly? So did you want to make a comment, please? Yes. That's right. Very good. Beautiful. Beautiful. It's very powerful, and it's novel. And I would say, as you just suggested, it was not what was being said by the rabbis, by the traditionalists, by the Yeshuva Yashan, by the religious community. Not only are you not religious, but you spend all your day working. And working really isn't a value. The value is mitzvot, is tzedakah, is Torah, it's Talmud Torah. Where does that fit in terms of value in Judaism? And here Rav Kook, look at the language of Rav Kook, all the kedusha that's in it, and it's given bibris, and it's like Torah itself. It has the power of Torah. So let's try to understand what Rav Kook is saying. And is Rav Kook just trying to find being dan lekavschus and kind of speaking in a flowery language about what they're doing, or are there sources for this? And here I want to share with you the following sources where I believe Rav Kook is highlighting the beauty of work from a halachic point of view, from a Torah point of view. And again, let's go to page 2. And an important statement to begin with is that statement in Pirkei Avos, that you have one of the great rabbis, one of the great Tanaim, who comes along and says, you are to love malacha, you are to love, you are to, to use the word to love malacha, you might say you have to, you got to find a job and you have to make some money, but to say to love it, what does it mean to love it? So here I want to share with you 3 different interpretations, and this is found in a very interesting sefer that came out recently. There's a Rabbi Aaron Lopiansky. He is a Rosh Yeshiva in Silver Spring, Maryland, and he is one of an very important rabbi in America today. He wrote a book called Orchot Chaim, Ben Torah for Life. And essentially what he's dealing with in that book, which is really a great book, is how does the yeshiva student move from the world of the yeshiva? They've been studying for 3 years, for 5 years, for 10 years. They now have to face reality. Their in-laws are not going to support them any longer. And they now have to enter the workforce. And how do they do that? Now, not only how do you do that, but what is the perspective? What is the viewpoint? Are you leaving the yeshiva and everything that you're now doing, now that you're becoming an accountant, a lawyer, a psychologist, right? Is that all b'di'evet? Is that all, just kind of we're forced into finding some occupation, some malacha? Or do you see that in a very positive light? Do you see the holiness in that, as Rav Kook speaks about? So here we go. So he shares 3 sources really based on this Mishnah. And the first source is from a sefer called the Kolbo, which is an ancient work. And he writes the following. We'll read the Hebrew, its translation as well. Misha osek, kemisha osek b'malacha osek b'yishuv ha'olam. So one who is involved in work is involved in yishuv ha'olam. Now what's yishuv ha'olam? It means that you are making the world a civilized place. You're settling the world, so to speak. V'hi mitzvah gedola. That is considered to be a great mitzvah. Shekein matzinu. And we find the following halacha. This is a fascinating source, and that is that one who's boneh bayis, one who's involved in building a home, v'noter kerem, one who is planting their vineyard, shechozer me'orchei milchama, that there's an exemption of that person. That person leaves the battlefield, or he doesn't go to the battlefield, leaves the battlefield, and he goes to take care of those needs, building a house, planting a vineyard. Why? Lefi she'osek b'yishuvo shel olam. That he's involved in creating a world, in making a better world. That is considered to be a mitzvah, says the Kolbo, and that's the exemption. Again, you have two mitzvah. You have a mitzvah of defending, of being on the battlefield, of being a soldier, but the Torah says, in that case, if you were involved in those matters, so that trumps, that overrides the mitzvah of being a soldier. So that's source number one. Source number two, which is taken from the Meiri. The Meiri is one of the famous Rishonim. We have the Meiri, his commentary on Pirkei Avos, and he writes the following on this Mishnah. Ubebraisa be'avos de Rabbi Nasan. We find the following Braisa. Amru derech tzchos. It says in the following way, which is, I guess, more a poetic formulation. Afilu Adam Harishon, even the very first man who was created, lo ta'am klum. He wasn't allowed to taste anything. There was no benefit. He couldn't have anything in his life until ad shasam milachat. The first thing that he needed to do, he was placed in the Garden of Eden, lishamra, la'avdal lishamra, that he was there to work. That's the first thing that we know, that God places man here on this earth. And what does God say? I want you to get to work. I want you to have an occupation. I want you to be engaged in work. That's something that ostensibly that's a healthy thing if that's what God wants of man. Shenemar ve'nicheu began Eden la'avdal l'shamra v'chein sham amru. And it says the following: Kashem she'aTorah nitna bibris. And here we have also this statement, which, interesting, this is, Rav Kook mentioned the same idea, that just as Torah is given with a covenant, kach ha-malacha nitna bibris. So too, malacha is given bibris, that it's given with a covenant. The question of what that means exactly, it sounds to me like, in other words, you can't find a pasuk in the Torah per se, one of the mitzvah that says you are to work. But we have something that's called bris, which means covenant, which means the relationship that we have with God, a relationship with what we are to do in this world. And part of that is occupation. Part of that is to be engaged in work, in doing something that's beneficial for ourselves and for others around us. Please, yes?
There is in Tanakh
yeah, very good. So he's kind of excellent. So you're right. So he's going to say that right now. It's the next line, actually. The Meiri writes.
I have other questions.
Yeah, please.
In the quote before about going to war and leaving war.
Yes.
That's specifically mitzvah. Is that only?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Those are good questions. I'm not sure the answer to that. The question is what type of war? In other words, is that only Milchemes Mitzvah or Milchemes Rishus? Is it only in Eretz Yisrael? All good questions. I don't know the answer to that. Yes, please. We don't know. We don't have an author of that. It's an early, like 1200s. We don't have the author, but it's considered to be an important work. Okay, so we read on. So it's part of the bris, the idea. Ratza lamar shehi bichlal mitzvah. So says the Meiri that what that means is that work is also can be categorized as mitzvah. To think of work as occupation, as a mitzvah as well. V'hevi'ua derech asmachta midichtiv, and as you just mentioned a moment ago, and we could see this, again, it doesn't say it, the word asmachta means we don't read the pasuk that way as a mitzvah per se, but we can look at the pasuk as a hint to that. Asmachta means we can lean on it, we can rely on the pasuk, and it says, midichtiv, sheishet yamim tav. It doesn't say keep Shabbos, it says work 6 days. The Torah says you are to work 6 days. And then, v'asita kol melachtecha, you do all of your work, and then you can enjoy Shabbos. But the emphasis, you could see, in a sense, the Torah is emphasizing the importance of work. And one more source. And this is from the Gra, this is from the Vilna Gaon, he quotes from the Vilna Gaon. And this is always a major question in terms of how a person finds the time to study, how much study time and how much work time. And here, this is really a fascinating formulation. Says the Vilna Gaon, Ach, im tzarich lasok b'mitzvah. If there's a mitzvah that you are to be engaged in, o b'derech eretz. Now, the word derech eretz often is used, and the way that it's used here, and we'll see, means an occupation, work. We have the derech eretz of, the respect that we are to have for others, but for the most part, when it's used in Chazal, it's used in this sense. Derech eretz means the way of the world, meaning the work that you're doing, the work that you're engaged in. Ach, im tzarich laso b'mitzvah, there's a mitzvah to perform, o b'derech eretz, hu gam kein mitzvah, Look at what the Vilna Gaon says, that work is also considered to be a mitzvah. Azayhu poter atzmo b'teva achas, even with one word of Torah. Because you have, again, one should learn every single day. But the Vilna Gaon says, as long as you get in one word, there's another mitzvah to perform as well, and that is to engage in an occupation in work. Interesting formulation, and I'm not sure, again, this is a big discussion in general, how one balances the time in terms of work and in terms of learning. But in this formulation, the Vilna Gaon, he says, as long as you get in your word of Torah, if you have another mitzvah, you're on call, you're a doctor, you have to be there till 6 in the morning, until 6 the next morning. That's all mitzvah, right? That's all mitzvah. Get in one word in the morning. Say Birchas HaTorah, you've done your mitzvah of Talmud Torah for the day, but you now have 24 hours of mitzvah that you're engaged in as well, which is as significant. That's what the Vilna Gaon says. And look at the following, one more source from, this is Gemara in Brachos, Daf Lamed Beis Amud Beis. The Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis teach, Arba'a Tzrichin Chizuk. There are 4 items that we always need to be mechazek. We always have to strengthen because sometimes we're a little bit lazy, we're a little bit, we don't give it the attention that it deserves. Ve'eluhen, I would say 3 of them are obvious, the 4th one is not so obvious. Torah, that we always need, we need chizuk, right? We need to learn more Torah, we need to be reminded the importance of that. Maisim Tovim, to be involved in Gemilus Chesed, doing good. This is the bottom of page 2, if you're looking at the very bottom source. Tefillah, that we have to be mechazek in tefillah. And what is the 4th? The derech eretz. Derech eretz means occupation, to be engaged in work. Interesting to have that within this category of Torah, Maisim Tovim, and Tefillah, and the 4th being, yes, the work that you're doing. You're a doctor, you're a psychologist, you're a lawyer, you're an accountant, you're a social worker, whatever it is that you're doing, that is considered to be something of great importance. And says the Gemara, this needs chizuk as well. Just like tefillah does, just like Maisim Tovim and davening, this is also considered to be a mitzvah, that to put in all of your effort, to put in the extra hours in that as well, that's considered to be a mitzvah. I woke up this morning and I walked outside with my son. My son, I bring him to school every morning, which is a nice chesed on my part, and there was a flat tire. A flat tire. So what do you do here in Israel if you have a flat tire? You should know. That very good. You call Yedidim. That's correct. So you call Yedidim. So I called Yedidim. Yedidim is a volunteer organization, and they come right away to help you with your flat tire. And I did that, and we called, and within 8 minutes they were there. This fellow was there, and with his motorcycle, and he knew exactly what to do. And he pumped up the tire, and he told me which gas station to go to. And I was thinking to myself, as I was thinking about our shir and our learning this morning, so that's work, right? That's avoda. Now, where does that fit in? Is that just like a b'di'evet? Is that just kind of like, this is what this person does, and he helps people with flat tires? Or is it something that has a lot of kedusha to it, has a lot of holiness, that he runs over to help me, that I was able to get my son to school on time and my other kids, and it wasn't a whole tension in the morning for me dealing with a flat tire, and all this was taken care of in a few minutes with this person who spends time doing that. Now, is that a mitzvah? Is that just what he does on the side? Or is that kedusha? Or is that also holiness? The chesed that he does to help somebody in the morning, to help a family in the morning. The repercussions of that, of like all of my kids and getting everyone out and I have my class today and dealing with a flat tire, and all of that was taken care of in 8 minutes. With this guy who jumps on his motorcycle, and this is what he does all day, that he's running around helping people that have flat tires, that have car problems. So I think this is what Rav Kook has in mind. We don't always think of it that way. And Rav Kook says that tzaddik reminds us, right, the person who has this insight reminds us to view it that way. And he's telling the Jewish world of his day and our day as well, when you see another Jew that's working, right, make sure that you take a step back and judge that person and see the kedusha in what they're doing. Yes?
Why isn't this concept, which is so critical to all of us?
Right. You're asking a good question. Rabbi Lopiansky in his book, so he talks about this, and he says, in the yeshiva world, and as they're studying, so they don't really want to highlight this because they want everyone studying. They want everyone to be committed to studying. But you're right, and that's why he wrote the book. He wrote the book because he felt that there was a need to share this message. We need to know that this is how the Torah speaks about work as well. The Kedusha of work, absolutely. So there's a need for that. And you're absolutely right. I think it's missing. It was one of the things that was, to me, this isn't such a chiddush because I went to YU. So in YU, that's the philosophy of YU. That's not like Torah Mada. In other words, that's the very core. That's the fundamental principle of YU. That you study Gemara all morning long, and then you go to your biology class, and then you take your LSATs, and you're preparing to be a lawyer and accountant. In other words, that's the very fabric of YU. So to me, it's not. But yes, in the yeshiva world, in certain communities, they don't really. These sources aren't the ones that they're necessarily going to be sharing. But then it becomes very problematic because you leave the yeshiva, and then you feel the rest of your life that all these hours that I'm an accountant or a lawyer, that I'm just kind of like, that's secondary. I don't know if it's a way, but yes, but feeling like that's secondary. The real thing is Torah, that's the real mitzvah, and everything else is not. And here are your sources that talk about that needs derech eretz, like davening and Talmud Torah needs chizuk. And there's a mitzvah. Yes, please.
Big problem in Shidduchim.
Yeah. Right. 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 Well, you have that. In the yeshiva world, they have girls that want to marry what's called a learner-earner. You know that term? A learner-earner. That means that it is somebody that learns and also earns, that also has a living.
Some have to wait for many
Yes.
years.
Yes.
They have to have a-
Yes.
It's an earner, because it doesn't work that way.
Very good. Yes, please.
Well, it doesn't have to be exclusive, right?
It's not, right.
Both together.
Exactly right. It's no, very good point, Harry. It's not exclusive, and it's not one over the other. And it's finding that balance. It's the beauty of davening, the beauty of learning, and of an occupation, and bringing those two worlds together. But the key is this. Rav Kook is teaching to see the Kedusha and to appreciate that most of us are not going to be learning 8 hours a day. We're going to be at our office. We're going to be sitting at our desk. And how do we feel about that? And how do we view that? And how do we view others that are doing that? And to see the Kedusha in that. Okay. And I want to share, here Rav Kook has a beautiful understanding of the Gemara, actually, that he quoted in the piece that we open with. Here's the Gemara. So this is page 3. Here's the Gemara. The Gemara says, and again, to some degree, it's a little bit of a shocking statement of the Gemara. V'amar Rabbi Chia, this is the top of page 3. This is Gemara Brachos Dav Ches Amar Aleph. V'amar Rabbi Chia bar Ami Mishmei De'ula. Gadol hanehene miyagia yoter miyirei shamayim. Greater is the one that has hana, that benefits, has the joy of the effort of an occupation, of the work that they're doing, even more so than the yirei shamayim, even the one that has fear of heaven. And then the Gemara goes on, I'll just read quickly, the ilu gabe yirei shamayim, the one who fears God, it says, Ashrei ish yirei Hashem. It says, the one who fears God, that person is praised. Ilu gabe nena miyagia ketiv, but the one who works, Yegia, it says the pasuk, Yagia kapecha ki tochel ashrecha v'tov lach. It says not only ashrecha, not only is there joy in that, but tov lach. Ashrecha be'olam hazeh, you'll have joy in this world, v'tov lach le'olam haba. So there's like this double reward, says the Gemara. There's even this olam haba aspect to the one who's working over the one who has yirat shamayim. Ulegabe yirei shamayim v'tov lach lo ketiv be. It doesn't add that term v'tov lach. Now again, this is like a wow of a Gemara that it says how great is the one who benefits from their work. How do we interpret that? So I want to read to you one line from Rav Kook, the opening line. This is Ein Iyar, his commentary on the Gemara in Brachos, and he writes the following. The language here is a little bit challenging, but I think we'll break through and see what Rav Kook has in mind. Actually, I have it in translation. By the way, just for your own knowledge, there's a Rabbi Daniel Mann. He teaches at Eretz Chemda and at the Gurs Kollel. He has translated the entire Ein Iyar on Brachot and Shabbos. It's on the Eretz Chemda website, if anybody's interested in that. So here you have a translation of this piece below. Let's read just the opening, really one line from the opening line or two from Rav Kook to see his language. So how does he understand what is special, what is so special about the one that is Yegia Kapo, the one that's putting in the extra effort. Ha'hargasha ha'me'uleh, this great feeling that a person has, shel nehene, where you have a sense of joy, miyegia kapo, from the work that you're doing. In other words, everybody has to find that area of work. You're a doctor, you're a social worker, you're a teacher, you're a psychologist. Like, what is it that brings you great meaning in life, that brings you joy, that you have a sense of purpose in what you're doing every day? So says Rav Kook, that feeling is a great feeling when you find that and you're doing the work that you're meant to do. Hi hayoter shlema v'tova. It's really like the greatest feeling of wholeness and goodness. Shel kol hahargashot hamusariyot sheba'adam. It's one of the greatest feelings. And by the way, it's not, when you don't find it, it's not always easy. But when you find that and you're doing that which you feel is your calling and that you're making your contribution, right, in the field of science, in the field of medicine, the field of psychology, or whatever it is, as an accountant, as a lawyer, as the Yedidim guy that hops on his bike and helps me this morning, right? That sense, I'm sure I felt really good about it. Hopefully, I think he felt good about it also, that he helped this person. That was the beginning of his day. And for him, that's meaningful. It's not for me. I wouldn't hop on a bike and be changing tires. But for him, he's good at that. And he finds meaning in that. So he says, when you do that, there's nothing, Rav Kook says there's nothing like that feeling. That really is, that's the ideal. That's like the optimal. Ki beyot chakuka betivo shel hadam. Because engraved in the teva, in the nature of a person, hargashat teva, shekevan shehu chafshi bepilotav. In other words, you can choose in life that which is, to find your calling. V'yachol al yedei charitzuto. Through this diligence, by being engrossed, engaged in this work, lihishtalem be'atzmo b'chol inyanav, and I think that's the key. And that is that you now are whole as a person, and that affects everything else that you're doing. So what is that? What that means is that if I'm spending my day doing that which is my calling, my mission, that I feel good about that, that's going to affect the way that I daven, it's going to affect the way that I learn, it's going to affect my gemilas chasadim. But the person who's just Yirei Shamayim, right, he has fear of God, but he hasn't really found his place, and maybe he's just sitting and learning, but that's not really what he's meant to do. So that person doesn't feel a sense of wholeness. That person doesn't really feel that sense of purpose. So I think that's what Rav Kook is getting at here, and that's the greatness of work and being engaged in work. And for all of us, finding that right path and finding what it is, the contribution that we're supposed to be making. And when we do that, there's a great reward in that. That is and says the Gemara, like a double reward. That's the Olam Haba. And I think Rav Kook says the Olam Haba is really the Olam Haba that you're feeling right now. You're feeling a little bit of Me'ein Olam Haba when you find that purpose. So that also is a way of understanding and appreciating the greatness of work and finding, and it's certainly not for everyone to be sitting and learning full time. For most people, that's not going to be their calling. For most people, it's finding that work and appreciating that, seeing the Kedusha in that, and seeing how that fulfillment really brings out the best in a person, and the best in terms of their shleimus, in terms of their relationship with Hashem, in terms of their avodas Hashem. One other main source that I want to share with you, the bottom of the page. This comes from a Kabbalist, and here, actually, this is brought in this book. Rabbi Lopiansky brings this source. I was very happy to find it. There's a great Kabbalist. He was known as the Leshem. You see in the top on that number 12. This is the source. His name is Rabbi Shlomo El Yashiv. He was known as the Baal HaLeshem, and Rav Kook studied with this Baal HaLeshem. He lived 1841 to 1926. His grandson was the famous Rebbe Yashiv, if you've heard that name, the famous posek here in Yerushalayim, passed away about 25, 30 years ago. Is it less than that? Okay. And that was his grandson. The grandfather was the great Kabbalist who Rav Kook studied with when he was still in Europe, and he studied with him in Eretz Yisrael as well. And he speaks about also what it means to be osek b'yeshuvo shel olam. And let's just look, this is from the writing of the Leshem. And again, this is a bit Kabbalistic, but I think we can really understand it in a very basic sense as well. Look at where it's bolded on the page. We'll read together in the Hebrew. Ki kol pe'ulotav. Do you see that? Second line where it's bolded. This is the writing of the Leshem, again in a sefer called Sharei HaLeshem, Tafkir Adam Ve'avodaso. And we're reading out, Ki kol pe'ulotav u'ma'asav shel Adam, Gam b'meh shehu osek b'yishuvo shel olam. Everything that a person is engaged in, and in the area also in terms of the occupation, the kind of work that the person is doing. Ubechol inyanehem hinei heim kulam tikunim mehakilkulim shenasu be'olam hatohu. And here, interesting, Rav Kook also uses that term that, if you remember earlier, the word tohu, meaning that the world is not a perfect world. It's far from being a perfect world. And whatever we're engaged in that perfects this world, that brings some perfection and wholeness to the world, that's a v'halachta b'drachav. That's walking in the ways of God. That's what God does. There's a world of tohu, and God now brings sanity to the world, brings order to the world, day 1, day 2, day 3. That's what we're doing also in the work that we're doing. As an accountant, as a lawyer, I talk about, when I used to come to Israel in the summers, and there was a barber shop, which is just a few blocks from me, and it's still there today. When you walk into the barber shop, there's a big sign, and it says, these are the mitzvah that you are observing as you get a haircut with me. So there's a list of like 7, 8, you're not allowed to cut this area, not using a razor, and to have this in mind, and this is what the barber has in mind also, as he's giving you a haircut, and for you to have in mind as well. So again, that's like an example of sort of like an actual like mitzvah that we can think of, but it's true in everything that we're doing in a larger sense also, says the Baal HaLeshem, we're perfecting the world, we're bringing a tikkun to the world. You're helping somebody else as a psychologist, as a social worker, as a teacher, right? As a lawyer that you're helping somebody else, somebody that's helping you with your computer. You're going through a difficult time, you need somebody to do that, so he comes in and he fixes your tire. So this is all tikkun ha'olam. So to think about it that way, and that's about lachta b'drachav, and that act. And certainly thinking about doctors or those that are healing and people that are doing that kind of work in terms of the holiness of that work. Ve'ein shum minyan ba'olam. And says the Baal HaLeshem, there's not a single thing in this world shelo naseh bo eise tikkun, that you can't do some tikkun, some fixing. Ve'al zeh nemar b'chol dirachecha da'eyu. And that's what it means to know God in all of your ways. So this is also a beautiful way of looking at, and this is a Rebbe of Rav Kook, so I found that very significant. Again, you could think about it in a more Kabbalistic sense, but I don't think it's so Kabbalistic. In everything that we're doing, to think about it as the tikkun that we're doing, and that tikkun becomes an act of mitzvah ve'alachta b'drachav. Okay, last idea that I want to share with you, and this happens to be from this coming week's Parshat HaShavua, from the Parsha of Bechukosai, and we have a pasuk in this week's Parsha that says the following. If you look at source number 2, this is page 4, source number 2. Ani Hashem Elokechem. I am the Lord your God. Asher hotzeisi eschem Eretz Yisrael miyod lahem avadim. I took you out from being slaves. Veshvor motot olchem. I have broken the bars, the yoke that was upon you. Va'olech etchem komemiyut. And I will lead you komemiyut. So komemiyut. So that is a important term for our Chazal, where we have at least two places that I can think of that we have it in our davening. So by the way, we say it right before Kriyat Shema. Every single day, right before we daven, V'avienu l'shalom me'arba kanfos ha'aretz, v'solichenu koma miyus le'artzenu. We're praying that God brings us koma miyus. Based on this, what's koma miyut? It means what? That's right. That we're standing tall. That we're standing erect. What? Right. Some say the vart that we shouldn't come here not standing up. We shouldn't be coming here, God forbid, just be buried here in Israel. We should all be coming that we can walk off the flight in El Al and that we can be here standing. So that's one place that we say it. And we also say in benching every time that we bench. Harachaman, hu yishbar alenu mi'al tzavarenu, v'hu yolichenu koma miyut le'artzenu. That God should bring us koma miyut le'artzenu. So what does this mean, koma miyut? So Rav Kook has the following line, really one line, it's a bit cryptic, but I'll read to you the following. And I think he says something very basic here. What's koma miyut? This is from the Siddur Olat Riyah. Shtei komot kishel adam harishon. The word koma miyut, he says, is in the plural. It's like a double, koma miyut, not just, I guess, singular koma. Koma miyut, that there's two levels, like 2 floors, so to speak. Shtei komot, 2 floors. We use that in modern Hebrew. Is a koma, right? Shtei komot b'chol kishel adam rishon. That man, and this is quoted from a Sifra and from the Gemara in Baba Basra, that man was created with two levels. What does that mean? Ki haguf v'aneshama yachad heim koma shlema. That a person is made up of two parts. That you have the physical part and you have the spiritual part. That is man, that man is created that way. And we're praying that when we come back to the land of Israel, says Rav Kook, that we should also be made up of those two parts. And what are the two parts? We need the spiritual part. We need a world of learning. We need, and all of us, to be involved in that world of learning. But we also need the world of Gashmiut. We just like Adam Arishan. We need a world that's also komamiyut, in the sense that we are physically, materially, that we are strong as a people. Gashmit v'ruchanit, right? That we need. That's what we're praying for, says Rav Kook. That we want to come back to the land of Israel, not only in the spiritual sense, but to build this land, and that we should have the greatest lawyers, the greatest healthcare system here, the greatest garbage collect, whatever it is, that everything, the physical world that we all live in here, that we want that to be, that we want that perfected as well. Hopefully we're getting there. Yes, please.
This neighborhood that we're located in,
Yeah.
which is called Talbia, which is an hour.
Talbia, yes. Not far from here.
The Hebrew name for this neighborhood is
Komamiyut. Very nice.
So referred to it as that. That is the official.
That's right. It's called Komamiyut. That's right.
That's the official Yerushalayim.
Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. I want to close with the following. So this was actually shared by my friend Rabbi Judah Michel, and he shared this. I don't know if you happen to have seen it in Torah Tidbits, but it's very, very beautiful, and it relates to the idea of komiyut, and really relates to the whole idea that we've been talking about this morning.
Doesn't it also
Please.
mean related, a kind of sovereignty?
Could be. It could be.
Tall and proud.
It could. Certainly tall and proud. Certainly tall and proud. And that's how Rashi, he uses two words, and I have it here in the source number 3. On the pasuk, Rashi, what's komamiyut? Says Rashi, bekoma zikufa. So that you're standing, koma, and it's zakuf, and you're standing in a, as you said, in a proud way, that you're standing erect, with an erect posture. So with that, I want to share with you the following. So of the many, many soldiers that were killed on October 7th, one of them was Sergeant Aviad Cohen, Hashem Yinkom Damo. And Rabbi Judah Michel shared this in Torah Tidbits, and I want to share this with you as well. And that is, and you see in front of you, I have it here on the source sheet, this is the door of his home on Purim. Now, on Purim Day, there were people, of course, people that would be coming to bring shalach manas, and it's not easy to bring shalach manas to a family that just lost somebody. Again, it was a few months earlier, but to come in in a joyous way and to deliver shalach manas, mishlach manot, is not an easy thing to do. So this is the sign that they placed on their door. By the way, you can see just on the left side is Mishpachat Cohen. This is the family of Aviad Cohen, who was 41 years old, married with children, and this is the home that people would be knocking on and bringing shalach manas to. So the family writes the following. I guess I would imagine it was the wife who writes the following. If you can, I'll read it to you. Purim Sameach. Happy Purim. Lebayit hazeh atem mitvakshim lehitkanes berosh morim. To this house, I want you to come in with your head held high. V'tikuma zikufa. I'm sorry, ubekoma zikufa. And that's the language of Rashi. I want you to come in standing erect, standing tall. Yes. Az lehitmalei be'oz v'hasimcha. To fill this place with strength and with joy. V'rak az lidfok hadelet. And only at that point to knock on the door. Yesh po mishpacha shel gibor. There is a family, the family here is a family of a hero. Shebechayim uvemoto hafatz or v'tikva. That in his life and in his death he spread light and hope. Ga'eh bachem, I am proud of you. So this is what's written on the door, where the wife wrote this message to come in with, and again, this is the term that she uses here, right in the middle, ubekoma zikufa, which means to come in. That's the language of Rashi, right? To come in komamiyut, to come in standing tall, standing proud. There was a hero that lived in this house, a hero that spread only light and goodness and hope, and we continue in that way. So I think this is what Rav Kook has in mind as well when he saw those chalutzim, those that were coming back to the land of Israel, the pride that they had, the courage that they had to build this land of Israel. And Rav Kook, unlike other rabbis, and so often Rav Kook is able to do this, and how beautiful is this world of Rav Kook, the teachings of Rav Kook, to always see the good, always see the light, always see the potential. And here he sees in the work that they were engaged in, that we're all engaged in, to see the kedusha in that, to see the holiness in that, and the pride that we should have in that, especially those that are building the land of Israel. And he writes that as well. And maybe I'll just end with that. We didn't read that last line from on the very page one. I'll just read the last line from Rav Kook. This is the third line. V'chol ma shemitvasot melachot v'avodot gashmiu be'eretz Yisrael. And how much more so, of course, this is Rav Kook is always going to come back to Israel. This being done in Israel, to be doctors and lawyers, accountants, and working the land here in Israel, how much more special that is. Teitzei al yedei Yisrael b'yisodam melachav avodah mishifluta hamerara. Yeah, there is a certain lowliness to work. There is, again, it's called, something that was cursed from Adam HaRishon, but we bring it out of that cursed state. We bring it out of that darkness. We bring kedusha and holiness and joy to our work, especially as we're building and rebuilding the land of Israel. All right, I wish everyone well. Good to see everyone. And everyone have a good week. Yeshikoyach, please.